What the peer-reviewed science says. From about 1880 our CO2 emissions started to dominate CC, and after 1950, according to scientists, humans are the dominant cause of CC. Fourth National Climate Assessment NCA4, Volume 1 peer-reviewed by the National Academy of Sciences, the world's most prestigious academy, founded by Abraham Lincoln, with over 200 Nobel Prize winners among their members. This report is an authoritative assessment of the science of climate change, with a focus on the United States. It represents the first of two volumes of the Fourth National Climate Assessment, mandated by the Global Change Research Act of 1990. The 600-page report was created from input by scientists working at 13 different federal government agencies. Based on extensive evidence, it is extremely likely that human activities, especially emissions of greenhouse gases, are the dominant cause of the observed warming since the mid-20th century. For the warming over the last century, there is no convincing alternative explanation supported by the extent of the observational evidence. Climate Science Special Report, Executive Summary. Let's look closer at how global warming is affecting plants and biodiversity. Increased carbon dioxide levels in air restrict plants' ability to absorb nutrients. Rising carbon levels threaten diets of hundreds of millions of poor. Carbon dioxide makes plants grow faster and create fewer micronutrients. Rising carbon emissions could make vital food crops from wheat to rice less nutritious and endanger the health of hundreds of millions of the world's poorest. Plants cannot live on CO2 alone. A complete plant metabolism depends on a number of elements. Plant growth has one limiting factor. In most of the world the limit is water. In mid-high latitudes it's sunlight. In really high latitudes it's water again. For plants frozen water is the same as no water. In tropical rainforests the limit is trace nutrients. There's practically none in the soil, it's all in the biomass and leaf litter. The thing was that CO2 never was the limiting factor, so more CO2 won't give more plant life. There are some short-term positive sides to increased CO2 in the atmosphere for some plants, but the added heat cancels out this, and the net impact is very likely negative, especially in the future. Not all crops are hybrids like durum wheat altered to tackle harsher and warmer climates. Weeds benefits faster from more CO2. Biodiversity, insects and oxygen-producing phytoplankton in the oceans are already affected by global warming. Farmers worldwide are hit hard by floods and droughts. They need stability and predictability for their crops' harvest, not a rapidly warming world. Negatives from more CO2 include: the added heat cancels out any short-term positive effect for some of the plants. Heavy downpours and droughts are likely to reduce crop yields. A 20-year study of crops grown under enhanced CO2 finds that there is an upper limit to C3 enhancement from CO2, while C4 plants, after a sufficient length of time, adapt to high CO2 by improving their uptake of nitrogen. So, increased CO2 ultimately depresses C3 growth, while C4 plants, which include numerous pest varieties, will become more vigorous. The net result is depressed food production. Plant quality declines as CO2 levels rise. CO2-enhanced plants will need extra water both to maintain their larger growth as well as to compensate for greater moisture evaporation as the heat increases. Where will it come from? In many places rainwater is not sufficient for current agriculture and the aquifers they rely on are running dry throughout the earth. Increased carbon dioxide levels in air restrict plants' ability to absorb nutrients. Rising carbon levels threaten diets of hundreds of millions of poor. Carbon dioxide makes plants grow faster and create fewer micronutrients. Rising carbon emissions could make vital food crops from wheat to rice less nutritious and endanger the health of hundreds of millions of the world's poorest. Weeds benefits faster from more CO2. Pesticides becomes less effective at higher CO2 levels. Increase in crop losses to insect pests in a warming climate. Biodiversity is already affected by GW. Insects and their habitats are already affected by pollution and CC. 75% of our food crops and nearly 90% of wild flowering plants depend at least to some extent on animal pollination, and that a high diversity of wild pollinators is critical to pollination. Insect pests also benefits from warming. Oxygen-producing phytoplankton in the oceans are already affected by global warming. Extra CO2 makes the oceans more acid. Coral reefs are already damaged from coral bleaching. Greening the Earth adds to the land albedo effect and is amplifying global warming. Climate change happening too fast for plant and animal species to adapt. Farmers worldwide are hit hard by floods and droughts. Natural disasters are costing farming billions of dollars a year.